Hello, welcome to Lesson 8 on Policy Dimensions of Agriculture. Today we'll discuss international and national policies for agriculture. We'll focus on international policies and agreements, national and regional policy case studies, policy challenges and opportunities. The goal is to understand the policy framework around the agricultural sector. Are you ready? Let's get started. First things first, what do you know about agricultural policies? I'll give you a few seconds to reflect on it. Agricultural multifunctionality has become a key concept in contemporary agricultural policies. In this section, we examine the policy dimension of multifunctionality, first at the international level, with global agreements and the WTO framework, and then through case studies at the European and national levels. Finally, we will be discussing the challenges and opportunities that policies for multifunctionality currently face. So let's start from international policies and agreements. The concept of multifunctionality in agriculture has gradually gained recognition in international policy debates, particularly as global institutions have begun to acknowledge the diverse roles agriculture plays beyond food and fiber production. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development has been instrumental in formalizing this approach, providing an analytical framework that defines multifunctionality as the joint production of market and non-market outputs, including rural employment, landscape preservation, and ecosystem services. This conceptualization has shaped policy tools meant to correct market failures and support agriculture's public functions, while minimizing trade distortions. At the same time, the World Trade Organization, also called WTO, addressed multifunctionality within the Agreement on Agriculture, AOA, during the Uruguay round negotiations. While primarily focused on liberalizing trade and reducing subsidies, the AOA acknowledges the presence of non-trade concerns, such as environmental protection and food security, that justify public intervention in agricultural sectors. Complementing these trade and economic frameworks, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations has actively promoted the multifunctional character of agriculture through its publications and programs. Notably, FAO's issues paper on multifunctional character of agriculture and land highlights the relevance of integrating multifunctionality into policymaking to enhance sustainability, reduce poverty, and protect agrobiodiversity. This vision is echoed in several international environmental agreements that intersect with agriculture, including the Convention on Biological Diversity, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. These treaties emphasize the need for sustainable land management, climate-resilient agricultural practices, and the conservation of biological diversity, all of which align with the principles of multifunctionality. Further reinforcing this trend is the International Treaty on Plant-Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture, adopted in 2001, which promotes fair and equitable benefit sharing from the use of plant genetic resources and underscores the key role of farmers in safeguarding agrobiodiversity. Finally, the United Nations Decade of Family Farming, which is from 2019 to 2028, frames multifunctionality as a strategic pillar for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Family farms are increasingly recognized for their role in maintaining cultural heritage, ensuring food security, conserving ecosystem, and sustaining rural livelihoods. These international frameworks, agreements, and initiatives collectively illustrate how multifunctionality has transitioned from a theoretical construct to a globally endorsed policy principle, guiding agricultural reform and sustainable rural development across diverse geopolitical contexts. Within the European Union, the concept of multifunctional agriculture has been progressively integrated into political and legislative frameworks, particularly through the Common Agricultural Policy. A major milestone was Agenda 2000 reform, which formally introduced a model of competitive and sustainable agriculture, recognizing the multiple functions of farming beyond food production. These include landscape management, environmental protection, and rural vitality. Multifunctionality is also a central theme in the EU document, A Long-Term Vision for EU's Rural Areas, which was published in 2021, and sets objectives to make rural territories stronger, more connected, resilient, and prosperous by 2040. This vision aligns with the strategic direction of broadening and deepening multifunctional agriculture, namely diversifying agricultural activities and fostering stronger socioeconomic ties with rural communities. Through the second pillar of the CAP, the EU has provided tangible support for multifunctionality via rural development measures such as agro-environmental payments, initiatives for on-farm diversification, direct selling, agritourism, and certified quality schemes such as PDO, PGI, and organic. These instruments aim to correct market failures and enhance the public goods provided by agriculture. Finally, multifunctionality has become a core principle of recent EU strategies, including the European Green Deal and the Farm to Fork strategy, which emphasize agriculture's role in the ecological transition. In this context, multifunctionality is not merely an economic adaptation to the crisis of intensive model, but also a political and territorial development strategy. Empirical evidence shows that multifunctional farms, particularly in urban or marginal areas, tend to be more resilient and economically viable. Let's now focus on national and regional policy case studies. At the national and regional level, multifunctionality is interpreted and implemented through diverse policy mechanisms reflecting local socioeconomic, environmental, and cultural priorities. For instance, France has long supported multifunctional agriculture through agro-environmental schemes, quality labels, and support for cultivated landscapes that integrate heritage and production goals. Austria has promoted integrated landscape planning and ecosystem service provision through cost compliance and rural development measures under Pillar 2 of the CAP. In Italy, especially in regions such as Tuscany and Trentino Alto Adige, policies have actively fostered the multifunctional role of small farms through support for agritourism, traditional products such as PDO and PGI, and mountain farming incentives. More examples from other countries. Germany has advanced multifunctionality through regional planning tools and landscape ecological assessments that help allocate subsidies based on service provision. Similarly, the Netherlands uses spatial zoning and ecosystem service mapping to balance production and conservation at the landscape level. These examples highlight the importance of tailoring multifunctionality strategies to regional conditions, including the land use intensity, population density, and environmental pressures. Furthermore, landscape approaches, such as the Multifunctionality Index, are increasingly used to evaluate policy outcomes. Mapping multifunctionality hotspots across Europe, for example, has shown higher service diversity in Southern Europe, notably in Portugal, Italy, and Greece, where traditional mosaic landscape and mixed land use still dominate. Such tools offer a means to better align regional and development strategies with EU-wide sustainability targets. Let's now briefly talk about policy challenges. Despite increasing political and scientific consensus, several challenges persist in mainstreaming multifunctionality into agricultural and land use policy. First, institutional fragmentation remains a barrier. Multifunctionality spans sectors, agriculture, environment, rural development, yet policies are often developed in silos. This can lead to policy incoherence or contradictory incentives. For example, subsidies for intensification versus environmental protection. Second, the evaluation of non-market outputs, such as landscape, aesthetics, biodiversity, or cultural heritage, is inherently difficult. The absence of clear prices or markets for these services complicates the design of targeted support mechanisms and increases the risk of inefficiency or rent seeking. Third, jointness or externalities. The degree to which public goods are inseparable from agriculture production remain contested. Some argue that multifunctional outcomes, for instance, flood mitigation or food security, require ongoing subsidies to sustain production. Others emphasize delinking support from output, suggesting targeted instruments such as PES, which are payments for ecosystem services, or other type of contracts. So using these instruments may be more effective and less trade distorting. Opportunities, however, are growing. So advances in ecosystem service modeling and spatially explicit assessments offer more nuanced tools to identify multifunctionality hotspots and evaluate trade-offs. Policy innovations such as eco-schemes, carbon farming credits, and result-based payments are emerging under the new CAP 2023-2027 to better reward public goods provision. Finally, a major opportunity lies in policy integration with global frameworks, including the UN SDGs, so the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and the European Green Deal. Multifunctionality can act as a unifying concept, linking agricultural resilience, climate action, biodiversity, and rural development. Moving forward, adaptive governance, stakeholder engagement, and robust monitoring will be key to operationalizing multifunctionality in diverse European contexts. Before concluding this lesson, I have a few questions for you. I will read them one by one. You can pause the video and answer them. So, what role has the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development played in shaping the concept of agricultural multifunctionality? How does the World Trade Organization's Agreement on Agriculture address multifunctionality? What contribution has the Food and Agriculture Organization made to integrating multifunctionality into global policy? Which international environmental agreement align with multifunctionality principles and how? A few more questions. How does the EU's Common Agricultural Policy integrate multifunctionality? What type of national and regional policies illustrate multifunctionality in practice? What is one of the main challenges in implementing multifunctionality in policy frameworks? Why is the evaluation of non-market product outputs problematic for policymakers? What opportunities have recent technological and policy innovations created? And how can multifunctionality contribute to broader sustainable goals? So once you're ready, we can move on to the answers together. Here are the answers. So, regarding the role of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development in shaping multifunctionality concepts, we can say that it formalized the concept by defining multifunctionality as the joint production of market and non-market outputs, influencing policy tools aimed at supporting agriculture's public functions while limiting trade distortions. Regarding the World Trade Organization Agreement on Agriculture, we can say that although focused on liberalizing trade, this agreement recognizes non-trade concerns such as environmental protection and food security, acknowledging the legitimacy of certain public interventions in agriculture. Regarding the contribution that was given by the FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization, to integrate multifunctionality into global policy, we can say that it has promoted multifunctionality through reports and programs emphasizing sustainability, poverty reduction, and agrobiodiversity conservation, especially through its issue paper on the multifunctional character of agriculture and land, which was published in 2000. Then, which international environmental agreements align with multifunctionality principles and how? There are several agreements like the CBD, UNFCCC, and UNCCD, which promote sustainable land management, biodiversity conservation, and climate-resilient agriculture, reinforcing multifunctionality at a global governance level. How does the EU's Common Agricultural Policy integrate multifunctionality? Well, it has recognized agricultural multiple functions and supported them through rural development measures, agro-environmental schemes, and incentives and quality labels, such as the ones we saw. What type of national and regional policies illustrate multifunctionality in practice? Countries like France, Austria, Italy, Germany, and the Netherlands apply region-specific tools such as quality labels, landscape planning, agritourism support, ecosystem service mapping. And they do this to reflect local priorities and land use dynamics. Then, what is one of the main challenges in implementing multifunctionality in policy frameworks? Institutional fragmentation is a key challenge. Agriculture, environment, and rural development policies are often designed separately, leading to conflicting objectives and incoherent governance. Let's move to the last answers. Why is the valuation of non-market outputs problematic for policymakers? Non-market outputs like biodiversity or cultural heritage lack clear prices, making it difficult to design targeted incentives and increasing the risk of inefficiencies or rent-seeking behaviors. What opportunities have recent technological and policy innovations created? So, new tools such as ecosystem service modeling, spatial assessments, eco-schemes, carbon credits, and result-based payments offer better mechanisms for rewarding the provision of public goods. And as the last one, how can multifunctionality contribute to broader sustainability goals? Well, as a unifying concept, multifunctionality links agriculture to climate action, biodiversity protection, rural development, and the UN SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, supporting integrated and adaptive governance across sectors and scales. This was it for today. So thank you for listening to this lesson and keep learning. Don't miss the next lesson to continue discovering the many aspects of multifunctionality in agriculture. There is still much to learn and you certainly don't want to miss this opportunity.